2 rounds of footy left. I tell you, the AFL ladder is intriguing. Big games on the weekend. Massive one on Sunday. Saturday. When did Collingwood play the Swans? Sunday. 3:20 Sunday.
Sunday.
How big's that?
That is a big game.
There's some illness now.
There's flu.
At the Pies, suggesting that 4 players didn't train the weekend. Carmichael Elliott, McCreery and Hoskin Elliott.
And I think Ash Johnson too.
Was it? Maybe.
I think he's got a little bit of flu too. Hey, just quickly, tennis at the Canadian Open.
How good's this?
You tell us how good it is.
Well, Nick Kyrgios has beaten the world number 1 player, Daniil Medvedev, 2-1.
Yep.
And the Demon is also playing. He's a set down to Grigor Dimitrov on serve, 5-4 up in the second set.
Okay. Where do you want to start?
It's a good effort to beat the world number 1.
My word, it is. Where do you want to start with the footy discussion this morning?
I don't know
in Tasmania, because you seem to be very confused about what's going on down there in Tasmania at the moment.
Well, I'm fascinated that I've made a few indirect inquiries, nothing that I can quote anyone on.
Right.
The AFL clubs were fully expecting to be furnished with a detailed report on Tasmania so that they can vote. They thought they would have the report in their meaty hands so they could pore over it with their directors and whoever else they need to make an informed decision. We were told that this decision would be made in August. We're now on the 11th day of August. Nothing. Well, that's from my man. I don't know whether there's any...
Zero, he's saying, is he?
Nothing has come across the desk from the AFL in regard to into the 19th licence being in Tasmania.
But maybe the AFL have things that they haven't then necessarily passed on to all the club directors and people.
The AFL haven't passed anything on.
That's what I'm saying.
That's my understanding.
Well, that's what you're saying, that they haven't passed anything on. Yeah. So they have zero to actually look at the moment.
Federal Labor Infrastructure Minister, Catherine King, so from a federal point of view, she said the priority was to land the 19th licence, focus on building the stadium. So there's some support from the federal government. So I don't know. It's just strange to me. I would have thought, given that they said that this vote would be had in August, that you'd need at least a few weeks to pour over all the information and detail and data. So nothing. That's what
There's
I'm told.
something going on there, isn't there?
Well,
there's stalling. There's a reason behind that stalling.
I'm a supporter. I'm supportive of the notion, but it sounds like. And again, this is a very naive. All I know is that they haven't got the info. That's what I'm told.
Yep.
It just sounds like it's amateurish is not the word, but if you had everything, all your ducks in a row and ready to go, you go bang, here it is, and any questions, we're ready to go.
You're a lot smarter than me.
No,
is there some connection here between, say, the broadcast rights not reaching an agreement in any way, and the AFL not prepared to push forward on the Tasmanian bid until they actually have some more understanding and information about what that broadcast rights might be beyond the next 2 years? Do you think that's connected in any way?
Well, why you would know that when you started to put an August timeline on everything?
Yeah, but I think they thought that they might have the broadcast rights deal done by this time as well.
Well, tell us that. So listen,
they don't have to tell us that.
Well, yes, they do. We said that we were going to have information out to all the clubs in August so that we could have a vote on this Tasmanian licence before the final start. But I can tell you now we've got a little stone in our shoe about the broadcast rights. We thought it'd get done, so we can push that back.
Yeah. Okay, but it wouldn't be unreasonable to think that might be the case, would it be, that has happened?
Say that again. I'm talking to the producer.
I know you're talking
Alex
to
Demonors a set up. Yes, he is, Luke. Thank you. Information came to me. Otherwise, but you are right. He's a setup.
My point is that in the thinking around all this and the divvying up of all the money that they might be able to gain, the AFL, they've got AFLW, they've got a new agreement that they've got to sign with the players. Yep. They've got this all that stuff, right? And now you've got GWS too saying that they would like to see the return of Kohler up there in New South Wales to help them retain players. Like, there are a lot of things on their plate at the moment. Yeah. And you wouldn't be committing to anything until you knew where you're going to be in 7 years' time, which is effectively the next 2 years of the broadcast rights and another 5 years beyond that. Yeah,
but you would have anticipated that when you're starting to make noise about this licence. And I accept all of that. But you're not telling me that they're still waiting on some details of the other franchise team that's come in, the Giants, on whether or not they can pay outside of soft cap is holding up a potential 19th licence. You're not telling me that, surely.
Well, I'm telling you this. I think they got pushed around a little bit regarding the timeline on Tasmania, right? That wasn't necessarily of the AFL's doing at that time. It was a lot of conversation going around there. Tasmania will push him, that type of thing. So
didn't Gill say
they
that
got
we'd
led
have an
by the
answer?
nose there in some way.
Didn't Gill? I might be wrong. Didn't Gill say that we would have an answer in August?
Yeah, no,
this?
he did. But what I'm saying now is that wasn't necessarily, that whole announcement wasn't necessarily to a timeline that they probably projected.
Well, it's not being
back early in the
communicated
year.
to Clubland, is my indication anyway.
Okay, well, I don't know where you think it's going to land.
I don't know. It's, who would know? But it would appear some way off if they haven't even got the details out to the clubs.
But it's convenient also for the AFL if they want to stall the whole thing, and Tasmanian government are saying, okay, no, this bid won't include a stadium.
Federal
but the AFL are saying,
federal
oh, yeah,
government
but
is.
we want it to include a stadium.
The federal government's given it support.
Okay. Let's move on to another topic, because this is Ben Rutten speaking about Dyson Heppell's future, the captain at Essendon yesterday.
They'd like to keep him, but if he goes, he goes. That's the way I read that. That they're not, they're not going to make it.
They won't keep him at any cost.
No, and they will have communicated that to him. But I think in the end they would say, if you get a deal that's better than the one that we've got here, then we can't match it. So if you choose to go, we won't hold that against you.
All you would hope for in a circumstance like that, when you've been a great servant for a football club and you're the captain, is that all negotiations are honest and above board, and people are telling you exactly as it is and how they feel around it.
Yeah.
That's all you hope for.
Yep, for sure. And for Essendon fans that love Dyson Heppell, you would also hope that they are looking at this going, this is trying to get the best result for Dyson and for Essendon.
Yeah.
And that maybe Dyson being at Essendon next year is not the best result.
Yeah. And it's not beyond the realms of possibility that they're saying, look, we really only want to offer you a 1-year deal. Potentially you could trigger a 2nd-year deal. But if there's another club out there prepared to give you an ironclad 2 years and the potential to go on as a coach there for another 2 years, then maybe that's in your best interest.
I think so. That's the way it looks to be playing out, I reckon, at the moment. This Brodie Grundy situation gets more and more interesting, doesn't it?
Well, particularly when it's been reported that Max Gawn has said that he'd be prepared to step aside as the number one ruckman and play more as a forward.
Yes, and then you add on top of that, I think Jay-Z Clark reporting that the Collingwood Footy Club are prepared to pay some of Brodie's salary.
Up to $300,000. But I think this is the interesting part, right? If you're Collingwood and you're negotiating potentially with more than one suitor, then that could be part of the negotiation. So depending upon, it might be Geelong that's prepared to pay more, or you get more interested parties in. So when this all gets done, it may be that Collingwood don't have to carry another $300,000 in their salary cap because of the competitive tension out there.
If you're a Collingwood fan, what's your thoughts on 250 to 300,000 being paid to have Treloar play at Geelong, at Western Bulldogs, and potentially 250, 300,000 to have Brodie Grundy play? That's a $600,000 impost on your salary cap. The fact that your club's won 11 on the bounce
makes it easier.
It does make it easier, doesn't it?
Makes it easier to swallow. I was thinking this yesterday, Gary. If they weren't winning and they weren't where they are on the ladder now, and we're still having these discussions, because we probably would be, because they still need to sort of manoeuvre their salary, then it would be a whole different landscape.
I think that's right, and that's good on them. They've got themselves into a position now maybe where they can turn their minds to it as well, given how well they're playing. If they weren't playing this well, then maybe they're looking at Brodie and saying, no, we need to keep him. We need him to bring him back into this side to make us really strong and competitive. They're really strong and competitive. They're second on the ladder.
Exactly. And do you think that they would have even entertained the idea of going after McStay had Ash Johnson shown the form way back at the beginning of the season that he's now showing?
I don't. That's a curiosity because Ash Johnson's performances have been on display now for long enough you would think, for them to reassess their McStay commitment, if in fact that's. But what I'm told, and I'm only going on what I'm told, is that deal's done.
Yes, I believe that they are a long, long way down the track there.
So maybe they've got another role for him.
Yeah. And maybe there's been a rethink too on Jordan De Goey. Like people I spoke to last week said, no, like he's out the door. But then now that may not be the case. From a Melbourne point of view, what do you think from the outside? You look at it and go, well, does Grundy, and if in fact, and I'd imagine this is still a mile off if it happened, do you as an opposition supporter go, geez, that's powerful? You
do?
Oh, absolutely. I think like
on what basis?
Well, because you got two key big guys playing in the one team, and I think the challenge will be for Max to be able to play that forward role. They say that they want to definitely play more forward and less in the ruck, and if they got Grundy, they'd be able to do that. What we don't know is how good a forward Max might be consistently.
Yeah. So and they would have to have that confidence. What if by round 8 next year, Max has played forward, he's kicked 7 goals, and it's not working, and there's no pressure in that forward 50? What do they do then?
Well, they second guess.
Well, it's but that's what I'm saying, and
yeah, but
they're better placed to make this judgment than us. But they must have some genuine confidence that he'd have to be a 30 to 40 goal kicker a year.
Yeah, but they've been forced to do this in some ways because Luke Jackson is leaving.
Well, yeah, if in fact, they still haven't had the answer. That's what they tell me, but they need
Clearly they think, though, that he's going to go.
Well, they say they have to have a contingency because they're committed to a 2-ruck program. And the next...
Yeah, and it's worked well for them.
Yeah, 100% it has. So I think it's a fascinating one. Big Maxi in good nick. What's the most goals Max Gawn's kicked in a year? I don't know. He's been...
In a game?
Yeah, in a year or in a game. He kicked 5 1/4 from the ruck in a prelim final. Interesting situation.
Where would you fear him most if you were an opposition coach? In the ruck, just going forward a bit, or more as a forward and less in the ruck?
No, well, a ruck for me because of how he supports the whole club and the back line and getting the holes and all that sort of stuff and his tap work. But he's kicked 16 goals is the most he's kicked in a year. But that's
in a season, yeah.
That's as a ruckman. So it's an interesting. I think it's a fascinating proposition.
I would think that there is tension at most football clubs, particularly those that are underperforming, and Essendon has underperformed this year. So if I hear there's tension, then I'm not unhappy if it's my football club because I would hope that there's some form of tension there.
I'm not doubting Caro's story, but what does it mean though? Is it what you're so it's how you spin it. So what you're saying is totally reasonable. Yeah, there's tension because this bloke's pushing hard for this and this guy's pushing hard for that. And
Tadoro's the list manager, by the way.
I would imagine there's tension on a whole host of issues at Geelong. There'd be some tension over decisions. Somewhere.
Always.
So maybe there's more to it though. She said it's
but if there was more to it, then
there's disappointing tension.
Yeah, well, I don't know what the disappointing tension might be, but I would think that they have conducted their internal review. It's been ongoing.
When are we going to hear about that? Will they tell us?
At some point, they may not make a public announcement about it, but we may see that they've shifted some people around. That's probably what will happen.
Supporters get informed about the results?
At some point they should, yeah. At some point they should, but they don't need to know exactly now what they're thinking.
Patrick Cripps appeal, yep, we get it. It's important. According to the AFL rules, 4 conditions are listed as error of law, that's the decision was so unreasonable that no tribunal acting reasonably could have come to that decision. I don't think that's the case.
Can't see that.
Having regard to the evidence before it, classification of offence as manifestly excessive or inadequate. I don't see it. It can't be manifestly excessive.
Yeah.
And the sanction imposed is manifestly excessive or inadequate. Well, excessive in this case. It's not 2 weeks is not manifestly excessive if you're found guilty.
Yeah. Okay, so how successful will their appeal be tonight?
Well, again, we always put the rider on it. Once you go up to the tribunal or the appeals board or wherever it is, we're not really sure how it's going to play out. But on that basis, I'm not sure how the appeal will go, but I understand them having a go at it.
Yeah, they have to. They have to. I mean, it's a desperate situation that they find themselves in. Don't you think?
I do. Yeah, I do.
I just want to throw this out. I mentioned this briefly before. Tony Shepherd, he wants the AFL to consider the reintroduction of cola up there in New South Wales. Now, this is not a news story. Obviously, it got taken away from them up there. He wants it to be reintroduced. He says that it affects their ability to re-sign players and also, more importantly, in some ways, to be able to recruit coaches as well, because it's so much more difficult for them to find a place to rent up there as a coach when you might only have a couple of years. So you're not going to go up there to New South Wales and buy a home. You're going to be renting. Much more expensive to rent up there. and therefore they should be given some allowance because of that. What say you?
I want to give you your flowers here, which is the term that you use. Remember we played Gil McLaughlin on Neil Mitchell when the talk about trying to put together a package for Alistair Clarkson, and you're looking at it and people go, well, yeah, okay, if he wants that much money, which I don't believe is the case, then they'll be able to pay him outside the cap, ambassadorial money, whatever the case may be. And then North Melbourne understand, they go, hang on a damn minute, we're fighting against it anyway. Our club's struggling on the bottom of the ladder. We're trying to attract a coach of the calibre of Alistair Clarkson. We need to be on a level playing field. And we I'm paraphrasing. I'm trying to find the grab here. He, at the time, Gil said no, he won't be paid.
An ambassadorial role outside of his coaching.
The soft cap won't be there available for it. And then he put a little rider on it. You picked up absolutely spot on at the time. Let's have a listen. Since then, the door's been thrown open again. Then there's been a change. Oh, well, if there's some ambassador, you can't do it when you're negotiating the deal. So you go, okay, Clarko, here's what we're going to pay you. Bang.
Yeah.
But once we sign you, if some ambassadorial money comes along,
became available.
So come on. If you're the Kangaroos, you just got to accept that. You're sitting there going, that's what we're up against.
Are they whistling Dixie though? GWS and Sydney. We know that Sydney has been hot on this topic for a long period of time since it was taken away from them.
I would think, given that all clubs have been absolutely savage from a soft cap point of view, to have that reinstated, I think is going to be a stretch. They would rail. I mean, Hardwick and Beveridge, and they've all been going off their nut about the soft cap. If all of a sudden GWS or Sydney got another bump up, then I think there'd be a fair blue going on, wouldn't there?
Yeah. There's always negotiation that takes place behind the scenes, though. It's a bit like politics. We'll take this from you, but we'll give you this over here.
That's why you're a wise old man. I'm a bit more naive than you.
Hey, I want to talk just quickly. Is the greatest disappearing act in AFL football in the last 50 years, has it been the hype around Matty Rowell? Think back to his first 3 games of AFL football, and then now think about the last time you heard anybody raving about Matty Rowell's football.
Yeah, I think, yes. No, your point is well made, but I also think Matty Rowell's been playing some really good footy.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that he hasn't.
No, but I think, at the time, 3 best on grounds in the first 3 weeks is going to cause some hype, isn't it?
Everybody is talking about Tuke Miller now, though, as their most important midfielder.
Yeah.
Anderson probably has even maybe gone past him in some people's minds as to how important he might be in the midfield. Rowell does a lot of that really hard inside grunt work.
That's what I was going to say. In the 3 weeks, we got the snapshot of him and it was brilliant, but that's not a long enough period of time to reveal, everything. What we now have seen and he has revealed is that his football is more blue collar than perhaps 3 best on grounds in 3 weeks suggests. So we're just got to make the adjustment. He's still a beauty, Matty Rowell.
I'm not saying that.
No, you're not.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. But the change around the conversation regarding him and his football, is remarkable. The way that it's changed
and understandable.
Yeah,
given that he ripped the whole competition to shreds in 3 games of footy.
Yeah, I know. Look, and somebody sent a text message about it. We've acknowledged the fact that he's had injury and serious injury that he had to get over as well. But he's probably exactly what they want. Stewie Jew wants. That bloke that just turns up every week and he knows that he's going to give him 100% effort and he's going to be able to be an inside midfielder that is a beast.
Number 1 tackler. Is there another club that's sniffing around Josh Dunkley? His name comes up more regularly on our board than anyone else's.
Yeah, and for good reason, because he's still weighing up his decision. He's got a big call to make, and I don't think it's going to be a call that he makes until the end of the Bulldogs season now. Brisbane, I understand, have a level of interest in him as well. So joining the likes of Port Adelaide and Essendon, who have been linked to him for a little bit longer, we reported a couple of weeks ago the Powers' interest in Dunkley, and I still have them as a real contender for him if he decides to leave the kennel. But I believe the Lions to be in the mix as well. He has a link in Queensland too, where his sister Lara plays netball with the Queensland Firebirds. The Dogs want to keep him, and they've got a long-term offer in front of him, and that's been in front of him for some time. So he has a big call to make, and obviously given the situation in 2020, he's really strung this one out to see which way it goes. But expect some conclusion on that probably at the end of the Dogs' year.
Calculating, Jakey Lloyd's been a consistent performer for the Sydney Swans over a long period of time. Is he negotiating a new deal?
He is, Tim. He's been one of the free agents who've gone under the radar this year. He's still had a contract on the eve of the Swans final series, but is in talks on that new deal at the moment, likely to be around the 3 to 4 year length. Knocked back a big offer from the Gold Coast the last time around. He was out of contract and he's set to stay at the Swans again. Been a real hit for them off the rookie list. Might play his 200th game in the final series. Also, Sam Reid, another unrestricted free agent, heading for a new deal at the Swans as well afterwards. It's been a pretty good year for him. Likely to be a 1 year extension.
Anthony McDonald, Tip and Woody, was he reconsidering retirement?
He was. My understanding was Anthony McDonald, when we reconsidered his retirement, was interested in coming back to the Bombers. Now, Essendon was certainly aware of his interest in potentially returning, and I think receptive to it, possibly under certain sort of fitness markers, but not considered likely now. McDonald Tipperary said this week he's not pursuing a return, but interesting one nonetheless. His career obviously ended very quickly this year after getting back to the place of VFL footy. The other thing to note as well from Essendon's perspective, I mean, they have been on the search for a small forward throughout this year. We know their interest that had been there for Isaac Rankin. They've also got a couple of players coming through the draft that they'll have ties to with the Davey twins. They drafted Tex Wanganeen this year as well, and also Anthony Munkara, who's a name that we'll be talking about a bit more as the draft gets closer. Lively forward. They may get him as a next generation academy player. Hasn't been cited too much at under 18 level this year, so they have to get him through to pick 40 if he's going to get to the Bombers, and with every week that sort of doesn't get seen on that level, is a chance to get there.
Sounds to me like the Wisps hiding him. The Cats are on top of the ladder, premiership favourites. Jacob Hopper, is he going to get there next year? And what about Tanner Bruin and Ollie Henry? Surely not getting all of them.
And Brodie Grundy interest as well, Gary. So there's obviously a lot happening there with Geelong, as there always is. Look, I think Hopper's a good chance to be right in the mix for the Cats, and we reported about a month ago their interest in him as a pre-agent. They'd have to trade for him, obviously. He's still got a year to go in his contract with the Giants. Tanner Bruin has interest in Melbourne as well, not just at Geelong. I think that's one that'll drag it out a little bit during the trade period, but I think he'll get somewhere in Victoria. And look, I think Ollie Henry is likely to stay at Collingwood. They've been in talks on a deal for a little bit now, but just hasn't got to that point of agreement. But certainly Collingwood, you'd expect, would want to keep him, given he was a first-round pick only 2 years ago.
Calculating Callum Twomey from AFL.com.au, and all the discussion around the Gold Coast Suns has been about Isaac Rankin, but they've also locked away a couple of other players. Is that right?
Yeah, long-term deals, Tim, for Lockie Weller and young defender Caleb Graham. Lockie Weller signed on for 4 years, so been really missed since his knee reconstruction mid-year as part of that group of half-backs that all went down in successive weeks, really, with Connor Butterick and Will Powell as well. But inked that new deal. And Graham is a young, tall backman who, look, a lot of listeners might not know too much about him as yet, but they're very hard to find in the market, and he did have some interest in Victoria this year. So his 4-year deal takes him through to 2026 when he'll be a free agent. So the Suns have locked away a couple of key players there for long term.
Carlton Collingwood contracts, any updates or any news on them?
There's always news, Gary. New deal for young Magpie Trent Bianco, who's triggered a 1-year extension, reporting today from Josh Gavlich on AFL.com.au. Well, Riley Beveridge reports that Carlton trio, Matt Owies, Matt Cottrell and Jordan Boyd all set for fresh 2-year extensions as well. So all three of those have been pretty important for the Blues, and they're all keen to stay.
Top 10 bolter, it's not my man, is it? Ruben from Western Australia. Top 10 under 18 bolter?
I've got another one for you. Put this name down in your book, Gary. I know you've been collecting notes this year. Bailey Humphrey. Now, he started the year in red-hot form. Actually saw his round 1 game for Gippsland Power and he starred. He continued to play some good footy at NAB League level. Then he got injured with a knee issue. He missed the under-18 carnival for Vic Country, but he's back in a big way the past couple of weeks. He kicked 4 goals, 5 behinds from 31 disposals a couple of weeks ago. Then last week I went to watch this game. He kicked 1 goal, 4 from 16 touches, missed a bit at the second half with a head knock. Now, he was everywhere in the first quarter. All the talk about him amongst the recruiters during that game was about Bailey Humphrey and how good this guy could be. 185-centimetre forward midfielder, genuine power, explosiveness, excitement. As I said, a lot of clubs are there on Sunday watching him and seeing what he could do, given he's missed some carnival time. There's a bit of Jordan to go to the way he plays. So think about that type of player.
Wow, my information is that the recruiters are having trouble getting a word out of him, though, Cal. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So you could say Humphries barely played this year with that injury.
Barely played. Hey, you told us about the Heppell and the Suns a month ago. That's just building along, so we'll wait and see with great interest how that unfolds. During that bye week, we need to get you in the studio and have a very long extended session. Can you put that in your diary?
Let's do it, Gary. Lock it in.
Thank you, Calculating.
Yep.
Calculating.
We'll have a jam session in here with Calculating Cal.
Good on you. Callum Twomey, afl.com.au. You can go there right now. You can read all of his stuff. He's when it comes to the talent identification, he's the guru, Whispers. He's just he's the number one man.